Hello, welcome to Bits and Pieces. I am your host, Jasper. By the way, I apologize if I sound a little bit different than normal. It is because I am currently a little bit under the weather at the moment, and I apologize for that, but I will resume creating videos for you. So today, this video is on hard drives and storage devices. Generally, what you want to know about these is they are what you use to store data on your computer. There are varying brands, types, and sizes, and there's too much nuance with the brands specifically to be able to speak about it in one video concisely because there are a lot of different brands and a lot of them have better reliability than others, and it's more like you'd probably want to speak with an actual IT professional in person rather than just watch a YouTube video on it. So I would just be mainly covering the types and generally what you'd want for sizing. And these things are essential to your build. You need at least one hard drive to store your operating system, which the specifics on that I will be speaking on more in another video later. But just know that you're going to need at least one hard drive for your system to store some essential files for your computer. First thing you want to consider with a hard drive is whether you want a hard disk drive or HDD or a solid state drive or an SSD. Hard disk drives are really common and they're less expensive. The essential with this is that they use a aluminum platter and a magnetic head is what it's called. It's just a little pointy bit that's magnetic, and it uses the magnetism to write data onto the spinning platter. And it is slower, but they typically have greater storage size than solid state drives. And they're less reliable because they have moving parts, and those moving parts can be susceptible to damage if you drop a hard drive. Solid state drive, on the other hand, are more expensive typically. They have zero moving parts. They are just like a stick of storage medium, a board with some storage medium built into it, and you just plug it into the system, and that stores your data. It is faster, has faster speeds, and more reliable than hard disk drives typically because they don't have any moving parts and don't have to worry about that. Another thing you want to look into is the physical side. Wait, another thing you want to look into is the size of the drives, either physical or storage. The physical size varies minorly. There's not very much difference. There are 3.5 hard disks. There's 3.5-inch hard disks, which is the width, how tall it is if you're laying it flat on a desk. There's 3.5 inches, mainly used for desktop PCs. There's 2.5, which are usually used in laptop PCs. Solid state drives have no moving parts and are usually only made to be 2.5 inches. And you may need an adapter to fit a 2.5-inch SSD into the 3.5-inch housing used for normal hard disk drives. The other part of storage is the file storage size of the drive. It's how much data can be stored on the drive itself. Typically, larger the more expensive the drive is, and it can vary from anywhere from a few gigabytes or a few terabytes, which are, I believe, 1,000 gigabytes approximately. You got to balance the size of the drive with what you're willing to spend on the drive. SSDs typically cap out at 5 to 8 terabytes, and hard disks can cap out at 18. You want to balance the pricing and the sizing because you don't want to have an 18 terabyte drive that costs you a few $100s that you're not going to fill. You want to be able to have at least enough storage to fill most of your stuff and not too much extra. Unless you're planning on expanding a lot more and having a lot more data in the future, then it might be better to shell out on having a lot of extra space. You also want to look into your transfer speed, which is the speed at which your drive can transfer the data. It only applies to hard disk drives, and it is based on how the platter or the aluminum disk within the hard disk drive can spin. The higher RPM value is faster. For example, 7200 RPM is faster than 54 RPM, which Seems pretty self-explanatory, but I figured I'd point it out just in case. There's also failure rates. Observe failure rates with drives. You want to make sure you know the failure rate. The failure rate is essentially just how long they estimate you can use the drive before the drive will typically fail. And it's based on the data they use with testing drives. They test the drives to check what their failure rate is. And it's an approximation, so if you're getting close to your drive's estimated failure rate, it seems likely you'd want to back up that data and get another drive just in case it does fail. Typically, SSDs have lower fail rates than HDDs, and it is important to know if you don't want to make sure data loss, but otherwise you may not need to worry about this. You mainly just want to know in case the drive starts to be going slow or starts to die and you want to make sure you don't lose your data. There's also price and budgeting. You need to look at all these specs and balance these specs and these options that you could get with the amount of space you need and the cost of it. Because, like, say you need 2 terabytes of space, you want to compare prices of multiple 2 terabyte drives to see which one has the best price and has all the different other features that you want, other specs that you want. Typically, the higher the specs, the higher the price. So likely, if you're spending more on the drive, it is more likely that it is going to be more expensive, and that is true for most PC parts. Most parts in a PC, the higher the specs, meaning the better the better the part, the more it's going to cost you. Which is why a lot of really good parts typically cost a few $100s, if not more, because they're exceptional, they're very good. In conclusion, you got to consider the prices and the specs to ensure you get what you need for the right price that you want. All of the above specifications I mentioned before can be taken into consideration based on what you need, because you may not need a fast drive, but you just need high long-term storage, which means a large drive with a maybe lower read rate, a lower RPM would be better than, say, a smaller drive with a faster transfer speed. It all depends on what you need and what you want.